Hello there and welcome to my little, well, not so little arty corner here on YouTube. I've actually got over 900 subscribers now, which is amazing. I've said this before and I'll say it often. I started this channel as a way to force me to speak out what was going on in my mind as I was creating art, because I find it hard to describe. It's a lot easier to show, but to describe as well and to explain what's going on so I know my mind better. I don't think in words. I think in feelings, in symbols, in metaphors, in images, and sometimes it's hard to put words to them. But if I'm forced to speak about my thoughts, I will, without realising how I know things at times. So I didn't expect to get even one subscriber. To have 900 or over 900 now is amazing. So thank you, each and every one of you who's clicked that subscribe button. It doesn't cost you anything to do. It's completely free, but it actually means the world to me because it shows that I'm also doing things that you find useful, interesting, inspiring, and various other things as well, I'm sure. So thank you so much. If you're new here or you haven't subscribed yet, please click the button. As I've said, it's free. And if you want to know when I'm releasing new videos, just click the bell button next door to that button and you'll get that. And thank you also for the likes, the comments, the suggestions, the requests, everything else. I appreciate you all so much. So with no further ado, this is kind of a request or more of a challenge. This is from Chen Keith, who said he'd love to see me draw a mandala on paper because most of my mandala work these days is digital. It makes life so much easier, and I can focus on the patterns I want to create rather than getting bogged down in the symmetry and the perfection of things. So it's been a while since I've drawn one on paper. So I did order a set of, where have I put them? Okay, let me show you. These are cutting dies for paper and sometimes other materials as well, and they go through a die cutting machine. I happen to have one that's called a Sizzix Big Shot, but there are many of them out here, and these are nice because they are bigger than the usual ones, or big enough. The biggest one cuts a circle out that's about 11 centimetres in diameter, and I do have another circle here which is slightly smaller. It's 9 centimetres in diameter. Because I was able to cut these two out of a piece of A5 paper or half of A4, because that's the biggest size paper the Big Shot will take through it, in width, as long as you like, well, as long as the plates will take it. But I know there are other bigger die cutting machines and there are smaller ones, but I was able to get these out of the paper, and also 2 strips of rectangular paper that I can use for other things like lettering or, you know, just testing things out and so on. I hate to waste paper. Trees have died. You know this, trees have died to create this. So that's how I created them. I'm not saying you have to go out and buy these things. These are things, I did buy the dies because I didn't have plain circle ones. The circle ones I've got like a stitched pattern around the outside. I don't like them. And these do have a little indentation around here. It's just how they cut. And they leave this indent, this embossed line. And I'm fine with that because that gives me automatically that little border around here. So the next job I'm going to do, and let me move some stuff out the way. You can see this because I'm going to add some colour to this before I draw on it. And I am not going to be using, sorry for the noise, I'm not going to use a stencil today. I just want a base colour. And do you know what? I think I might go with speckled egg. Sorry if you get shadow across you. My pen box is over this side by the window, so you may get some shadows. So I've got some speckled egg here, and I think what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to mainly put this towards the middle. Actually, I might need, oh no, it'll be all right. It's very subtle, you may not see the colour, but we'll see how it goes. I'll just build it up, because if I put a lighter colour towards the middle and dark around the edge, it will give me that kind of gradient, and I am going to make it fairly I say fairly symmetrical, I'm not going to guarantee it is, but you know what I mean. Sort of like a circular kind of gradient of colour. So I've got that one there. I think I'd like another one that is perhaps just a little bit... Let me go for Broken China, because Broken China is really one of my favourite blues, I think. The other thing I need is I'm going to need some kitchen towel, or scrap piece of paper, but kitchen towel will do it, so I can keep my fingers clean and not put my fingerprints in here. So let's just pick up some more of this Broken China. It's a warmer blue, I think, than the speckled egg, but that's fine. And you can see the colour around the edge where it's picking it up, but it's still leaving that little, it's not getting into that embossed space, which is great. But I do want the colour to go a bit further than just the edge, I have to say. Let me have a look here. So it's Friday, it's the 15th of July as I record this, and it is fairly late in the morning. It's just gone 11 o'clock. I've been waiting for a headache to lift. Yesterday was, I had a bit of an emotional start to the day. You know, some emotional weather that had to be dealt with. And I think I mostly did it. Actually, I think I'm going to go over the centre with this, because I prefer this slightly darker blue to the speckled egg. The speckled egg will still be there, and it might cool this blue down just a little bit. But it's such a lovely, pretty blue. And then I want a slightly darker colour, and I do want to go with blues. I think the prize ribbon would be a bit too dark, so let's go with Faded Jeans. And I just want to add that around the edge again, just to get that slightly darker rim. So now there is something that you can download from Zentangle called the Markus Operandus. I think there's two of them. There's one, or is there three of them? I'm not entirely sure. I think there's two. I think there's one that goes with the proportions of phi, which is all to do with the golden ratio and things like that. And another one that you can use with square tiles or circular tiles or any kind of tiles, I think, that Mark's there. So I may actually go and get that or print one out, because I don't know where my versions would be. They're most probably over there somewhere, because I have printed them out, but I've got them saved. And I'll do my best to remember, and I'll put links to them in the description, so that if you want to use those, which I'll do today, because I've got a protractor and stuff out, but you know, that makes it very, very easy actually. Okay, so I've got another one here. So I'm going to do the smaller one as well. And you know what? I'm going to do that in greens. Today is a day for blues and greens. But I know I've got some greens in my yellowy colours. Nope, don't want those ones. Definitely want these. Because I was looking for this salvaged patina, which is probably my all-time favourite distress ink colour. It's so lovely. It's not the only, well, it's one of my all-time favourites. It'll definitely be a go-to for me quite often. But it's just this lovely verdigris kind of colour. So I am just going to apply this to the centre. I am going to take it right up to the edge as well. And we will most probably get a little hint of the colour around the edge, but I'm fine with that. But I do want a different colour around there. Now, peacock feathers would actually work quite nicely with it. Peacock feathers is this kind of tealy green. And I think that might work just nicely around the edge, perhaps. So I'm really just piling tone on tone here, really. Nothing too complicated here. I just think it's nice sometimes just to work on coloured paper. I think I might actually add a slightly different colour there. I think I might use a blue again. Purple, actually purples would look nice, but I think I'll use a blue. Oh, that's okay. And this one is Mermaid Lagoon, which I think will go quite nicely. And around the edge, that it does. I prefer that to the peacock feathers. The fact that these are similar in colour, as I've said today, is not a problem for me. In fact, if anything, it is something that I would rather like. Okay, so job done there. I just want to clean my piece of foam here. So I'm just spraying some water on my stamp cleaning mat, the stamp cleaning pad, because it does, there's enough of the detergency stuff, the stamp cleaner on there, that it will just reactivate that. And then I'll just dry it off on my bit of paper there, pop it in my pencil pot, and it's good to go. Beats faffing around with little bits of cut and dry foam. So these two are now mostly done, but I want that spray bottle back, because I am going to add some drops of water on this, partly to bleach these out and leave an interesting pattern, because it's what I do. So I shall leave those just for a moment, and I shall then just pick the water up. Otherwise it takes ages to dry, and it can also sink into the paper and change the paper texture a bit much, and it makes it longer, it takes it longer for it to dry thoroughly. So there we are. Actually, I really like those with the water splatters on. It's a shame that this doesn't pick the colour up too well. Let me try increasing. No, it doesn't. It sort of it's actually quite a yellowy tone today on the light, and I don't know why. Who knows? But I'm going to leave those to dry. I'm going to print out the Markus Operandus, and as I said, I will do my best to remember to put a link in the description. I know if I don't, somebody will remind me. So let me go and do that, and I'll be back in no time at all for you. A few minutes for me, most probably. Okay, see you in a mo. Bye. Okie dokes, that was quicker than I thought it was. But these are now dry, or as dry as I'm going to get them. And this is, it's called the Markus Operandus. You can find it on the Zentangle website, zentangle.com. But as I say, I'll put links directly to the PDF version that you can print from your browser or save to your computer and print, or device. And I've saved the links. I'll check they work as a saved link though. But this has all the hard work done for you in some ways, all the hard mathematics. I mean, I can do maths with things like this, but there are all kinds of ways of working with this. They've marked, like if you've got the 0 or the little o, this gives you an 8-fold symmetry, so you'd have 8 symmetrical lines. The ones that are marked with numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 gives you 6 sections to the mandala. These ones here, what would they be? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 6. So that would be 12 points, I think. Yes, they are, because they're halfway between the numbers and so on. And it's possible to do others if you've got the maths, but these are sufficient. So I'm going to use the largest tile, and what you do is you sort of centre it on this. Now this is much bigger, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a ruler to draw my lines in, and then hopefully if I've got this centred, this will mostly be, I'm going to do, I've done that there, I don't want to do that there, I'm going to do that there. There we go, that'll be fine. So I'm going to do 6-fold symmetry, so I am going to go round the houses this way. oops, as I have my line going away from my ruler, and then down here. And I know that in Zentangle you'd mark these points along the edge and you join them with freehand, but I have rulers. So that will work nicely. What I don't have here, you can see I'm a little bit off centre here, but this is where the centre is there, so it's not too bad. Not too bad, not too shabby. But what I am going to do is I'm going to mark these points in between while my mandala or my circular thing is still here, so that if I want to divide the sections at the top, I've got that as a kind of guide. So I finished with that. I'll just quickly show you the other one. And you can see, sorry, with this one, you can see you can put squares in here and use squares. You can use it to divide squares up and all sorts of things, you know. It all just works. But the squares are quite nice because that's the fourfold symmetry. Threefold would be 1, 5 and 3. So, or 2, 4 and 6. So there's lots of ways of using it, but I'm not going to get into that. I'll try to explain that. This is the second version, which is for 5 tiles and things. So I've printed that one out, but it's not applicable today, but it's a way of finding this magic point, the golden point, you know, the using 5 proportions, which is, you know, a bit of fun more than anything. So here I've got this. So what I do want to do, I'm so fussy about things that I really, really want to draw some circles around here. Oh, lordy lords. Okay, how can I do this? Right, I know. What I'm going to do is I'm going to choose a line. I'm going to put my glasses on so I can see what I'm doing. And you can see that I've got a ruler. I know with Zentangle they use things like pen lids and marks on pens and so on. But if you've got a ruler, this is perfect. So from the centre, I've put 10 there because it's a nice number to remember and see. So I can mark, I'm going to mark out 2 centimetres, 2 centimetres, like this. And I'm going to do that on every single line. And that will give me guides for joining these up, kind of in a circular fashion, just to give me those kinds of guides. I haven't done this for a long time by hand, so bear with me. Let's say you can do it just by eyeballing it freehand. You don't have to find the exact centre, though that Markus Operandus does actually make that, you know, pretty good. So I've now got these marks, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to join them freehand in a way that hopefully will make a circular kind of shape that won't be too shabby. And again, I'm using my pencil very light pressure because, well, I'm going to erase these lines because they're there just for a guide for me. The trick here is to keep the distance, say between the edge and this one, about the same. This one actually I've gone a bit flat there, so I can just adjust that. And perhaps drawing the outside one in is a bit easier because once you've got that one in, with that about the same distance, you can do this one as a judge. It's easier to do the smaller circle. But again, if they're not exact, it's not going to be that important here. That's why I love digital art. It makes life so much easier. And I am going to join these sections up, but for the 2, not all the way to the centre, just the 2 outer rings, just to give me this just split those pieces up, you know, fairly equally this way, and then I can, well, I could eyeball it to divide these further, but perhaps not today. I don't know. Perhaps I will. Where's that thing gone? It's over here, because this is, remember I put this in the middle and I marked these lines off. Well, if I want to split these again, all I need to do is to move this around so that those little marks I put are in roughly in between, and then I can do the same here with these. And just go around, and that will roughly split these equally. I think I've got this a bit off centre, but it'll work out. Because again, it's just that, yeah, that one there. I think I've got them all now. It's just an idea of where that centre is, so that I can just go through and through the centre, and I'm just going to split the outermost section, I think. Yeah, I'm just going to split the outermost section, so bear with Mo. So I could see that one's not quite in the centre, is it there? So let's just move that one there and get my eraser and just erase it the same way there where I've made a mistake. As I say, I know it's not the Zentangle way, but I'm not a CZT. I use Zentangle patterns, but I am a bit of a scientist, which means that I tend to want to be a bit more precise. You know, the precision is the thing that comes naturally. And so I have rulers, you know. I have multiple rulers. In fact, it gets a bit ridiculous in this house, because I find rulers stuffed everywhere, and I think, oh, where's that ruler gone? And then suddenly it will turn up in a strange, bizarre place. So I've obviously left it somewhere, and it's worked its way, you know, down the side of the couch, or, you know, the settee, whatever you want to call it. So there we are. So I've divided this up. Now I hope you do know that I have absolutely no idea at all of what patterns I'm going to draw here. All I know is I have some pens, and I have my reference book here somewhere under my asthma inhaler. So I can always have a look here if I get stumped for patterns. Okay, now then, this inner circle here is just full of triangles. So I think this one is just ripe for Tripoli. So I'm going to draw my lines in. I'm going to draw these ones freehand, even though I've used a ruler to draw my guidelines in. My actual drawn lines are going to be a bit on the wobbly side. And because my centre was a bit off, I've actually bent the lines a little bit so they hit the centre. I'm going to go around here and here and just keep going. And going. And I'm holding one side of this disc in the fingers of my left hand, just holding it up, because my fingernails are pretty short. I trimmed them a couple of days ago because I don't like long nails. They get in the way. So Tripoli involves having rice shapes along these lines like this. This is quite a big central motif, but I quite like that because it gives me space to do something in. Sometimes when you make them small, there's not a lot you can do. And I also need to do some rice shapes along the edge. So yep, so I woke this morning with a headache. It was probably because of my emotional sort of like storm yesterday. It didn't last for, well, it lasted for a few hours. It started the night before. But I worked my way through it and I was feeling a lot more settled and calm by about lunchtime, really. But it always leaves its mark, as it were, on me. And, you know, with a headache, and I felt sickly. I'm now feeling hungry, but I'm not going to try and eat yet. The headache pills have worked their magic, so my head's a bit clearer. So, there are lots of things we could potentially do inside here, but I think I'm going to keep it fairly simple. And I'm going to pop a little triangle inside, because I'm going to emphasise the idea that this is a triangular, based on triangles. I was thinking, oh my gosh, I've done it wrong, and I have, because I've got the lines curving outwards instead of inwards. But okay, I'll work with that. So I've popped all of those in, and that looks nice enough as it is, but if you know me, I'm going to go for some contrast. So it's going to be 2 lines, and I'm trying to follow these around so they are all about the same, so they sort of line up with each other. It doesn't have to be perfect, because the measuring police will not be around to your home to tell you off. So even though I'm really fussy about drawing all the lines and things in with pencils and rulers, and tell you what, that Markus Operandus was brilliant for this. Saved me having to try and find a protractor and a compass. Yeah, I've got them here somewhere. Well, protractor. Got on this. Compass? Yeah. See, I've got them here somewhere. Now then, I'm going to do exactly the same on these outside bits, where I am going to, it's going to be 2 lines and fill with black. And I'm going to try to get them to match up on either side of the rice shape. So if I draw them in pairs, which an image of pear, the fruit, 2 pairs, a pear and a pear, jumped in my head then. I kid you not, this is how my mind works. So not the fruit, but 2s. It's going to be one of those days, I can see. Post-headache craziness or randomness. This doesn't take too long, and it's quite nice to do. It's that repetition, and there's a soothing quality to doing this. So here's me saying, if I draw these lines together, they'll match up. They do mostly anyway. So let's go for this one. And this one. It's the last repetition of these around. Like so. So that's really quite nice. That's a bit clunky there, so we'll just tidy that one up. Now these little triangles here in the middle, I am going to put a circle in them and fill those corners in, because this is beginning to get, you know, it links back to, I suppose, you know, the triangle and so on, and I think it just finishes this nicely. But those circles will look lovely, perhaps in gold or silver, or even a metallic blue, or a glitter gel pen in blue. Just to bring that kind of pattern out here, that circular repetition again. I absolutely love mandalas, always have done. And Carl Jung, who was Swiss, one of the fathers of modern psychology, him and Freud. He used to himself and encourage his patients to draw a mandala every morning, because he saw them as a window to find out what was going on beneath your conscious mind, what was going on in your emotions, in your subconscious mind, to help you work through what's stored there, to help you towards healing. In the East, mandalas are used creating mandalas is used as a meditative practice. And in Buddhism, they make them out of sand. And once they're finished, they just cleared away. All that hard work goes, all this different coloured sand, to these huge, beautiful mandalas that are often made collaboratively. And it's used as a way of showing and demonstrating the impermanence of everything. Nothing is permanent, nothing lasts. But you can appreciate the beauty while you're creating something and while you finished it, and then you go on to something new. And they're also used as focuses for meditation, because that circular motif represents both the universe, it represents towards the centre of ourselves, out to the universe, and I suppose universal consciousness, God, whichever. And they can be used as a visual focus for meditation, for people who prefer to keep their eyes open or wish to meditate in that kind of way as well. And they become very mesmerising because of that geometric nature. Carl Jung's weren't necessarily geometric. They would all kinds of things would appear there. There might be drawings of people or symbols or colours. It wasn't about geometric perfection or repetition. It was about just creating something within that circle that represents you. So, as I said, the whole circle represents you, and the centre is your heart or your soul, spirit, whatever you want to call it, if that's your thing. So I've got a pretty nice, I actually really like that. I'm not going to add any line weight on this section because I'll use colour, and I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with these rice shapes here. I'm tempted to leave them just as they are. But what I am going to do, because this is what pleases me, I'm going to take my time and draw this border around. And I'm taking my time. I'm drawing a little bit slower than I normally would because I want to keep the distance roughly the same all the way round. It's not going to be perfect because I'm not drawing with a ruler, but as near as I can get it is fine. So that gives a nice edge, and I am going to sometimes just adding that one section, just suddenly you can go, yep, now I know what I want to do there. So I'm auraing inside this section. And that does give that nice kind of finish to it. And with these, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a kind of leaf shape there. I'm not going to start at the point, so I'm making it smaller along that central line. Now with this one, I'm going to disguise that slightly wonky line a little bit. I'm trying to keep them roughly the same size, but it's not critical. Again, they're hand drawn, so they don't have to be entirely perfect. But near as you can get it is fine. So that's my central motif, and I quite like that. And I'm already, my head is ticking around how I'm going to get shadows going here and things like that to really increase this. My only problem is, what am I going to use to introduce those shadows? Okie dokes. So I've now got these sections here, and I want to do something with these, but my first job is going to be to draw a circle around. I'm trying to do 2 sections at a time, so my arm will comfortably draw those in. And it's not likely to be a perfect circle, but it'll be as near as anything. And once it's filled in with pattern, those slight imperfections will hopefully disappear. Okay, so because these are much smaller than I would do digitally, there's not going to be as many layers to them as there could be, as there would be if I was working digitally. So what I'm going to do here, though, is I'm going to draw a double line to separate these sections, and I'm doing that with a line on either side of my pencil line. Because that's what I want to do. I'm not a CZT in any way, shape or form. I sometimes think perhaps I ought to go and do that training, get the certification and so on. But now with the cost of living going up so much, I'm not sure I can quite justify that, because it's the cost of my heating bill for a year, as it will be when I renew my contract. So my heating bill, or my energy bill, is going up from something like £70 a month to the best part of £300 a month. And it is absolutely bonkers. Now this isn't right in the centre, so I'm going to adjust this here, just to make these pieces a bit more even in size. It's not critical. So I've got these. You can see they're not all exactly the same. Now, my mind is going to, I think I want to do Betweed here. But perhaps not in every section, perhaps every other. Every other? I'm really not sure. See, my mind's ticking now as to what I can do here and how I can do that. Because I do like geometric patterns when I draw things. I think Betweed would be quite nice actually, because I like the woven nature of it, and it'd be quite a nice contrast to this. I think that would work quite nicely. So Betweed, I'm going to use the outer edge of this as my starting point, and it's about going along that outside line, and we are getting them not quite meeting there, but that's fine because they will meet and overlap on the next one. And it's just gradually going back and forth and letting these lines spread out towards the top and overlap, and try and keep the amount they overlap about the same each time. But I just love the way this pattern weaves. And this here is part of a pattern called the Flower of Life. And you might, don't know what you might have heard, you know, we often refer to a web of life or a tapestry of life. So having something woven sort of goes with this idea. Now these little bits in the corner at the top here look a bit strange. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to split them like that, so that the weaving looks like it carries on underneath. And this is lovely because it gives a kind of curved up appearance to this section. So it will have dimension in it, a lot more dimension when I add some shadow and shading. So I'm going to do another one with you, and then I will stop my camera for a moment, finish the rest of them, because I am aware that watching me do the same thing over and over, it actually can be very meditative, but it can also be a bit like watching paint dry. And I know my video it's got to be close to about 45 minutes now, give or take. So hopefully you can see what I'm doing with the weaving back and forth. I often keep my paper still, and then this one I'll move that way, and this one I'll go like that. So I am overlapping, but in a slightly different way. So instead of starting at the corner, I'm starting, you know, this side I'm starting at the corner, but this side I'm starting part of the way along that line. And then I'll go back and just add a couple of extra lines there just to help with that appearing. So I'll finish the rest of them and I'll come back when I've done that, which for you will be no time at all, but for me could be a little while. So see you momentarily. There we are, nearly done. Get to this point, and this always reminds me a little bit, not entirely quiet, but almost like fan vaulting in Gothic cathedrals, medieval cathedrals. And you get these lovely fan shapes from the Gothic arches and the roofs, and the ceilings, and they almost look like trees. I'm sure that's where a lot of the inspiration has come from. But they don't actually intertwine like this, but you get that same kind of fanning out of the lines. So I just wanted to share that with you, that thought. And again, if I remember, I'll put a link to a picture showing you what I mean. But there's Betweed all done. And such a simple pattern, but so it's just lovely how this just kind of works. Now I could spend a lot of time going through and adding some weight to the end of these lines, which is possible. But I think I might leave that and see how it goes with everything else. I can see where there are little bits here. Look at that, I made a mess there. Now I'm making it worse. Okay, so I've got that there, and I do like to pop another border around it. I like this separation of sections because sometimes without this little separation, patterns just don't seem always to fit neatly one to another. I don't think so. Okay, let's keep going. Oh gosh, that's a bizarre one, but again, it is what it is, and I'm not going to beat myself up about it. I'm drawing by hand, so it's not going to be perfect, but it will be good enough, even with all the little imperfections. So I've got here, and do you know what I'm going to do here? I just think these just need that little bit here of some black, because I just think that will, it wasn't looking quite right. They weren't tying together with the central bit, but also by adding some ink here, it also gives that feeling that we're looking into another surface or a series of surfaces or layers. So it's like this is on the same layer, you know, same height as this, and then these are a little bit lower, and perhaps this circle here is lower again. So it's almost like we're looking down into something, which is quite lovely. Okay, now I've got to decide what on earth I'm going to do around the outside edge. And I think what I'm going to do here is I am going to use an idea of kind of triangles, but instead of triangles, I'm going to bring this idea of arches back. Because I've talked about these arches here, I'm going to use these kinds of shapes to create kind of petal shapes around. So I'm taking these up to, not right to the edge, but where this embossed line is, so that I have this edge around the mandala as well. Now I have got some of my sections here are bigger or smaller than the ones next door, big and small. So I am just guessing where the centre is and just making them a bit more symmetrical. That's all. It's like this one. This one here is a little bit smaller than that, so if I go a little bit to that side, I'll even them out that little bit. So this is beginning to get this looking a bit like, almost like a flower. So I'm going to do a couple of these with you, how I'm going to finish this off. So that if you do want to draw along, you'll get to see what I'm doing. But also, you know, it's a way of creating your own mandala. If you don't have circle dies or a compass, use a circular plate or saucer or jar to draw around to get your circular shape. And cut that out with scissors or a knife, depending on which you prefer. So I've got this here, and what I'm going to do, and then you can have a circle like this. It doesn't have to be any particular size, just big enough for you to work on. If you've got a printer and some simple software where you can draw some circles in it, you could also print those out, cut them out with scissors again, or not, as the case may be. There are always ways and means of doing things. I just have the luxury of having a die cutting machine here. Say it's from my more crafty days, or you know, time when I was exploring crafts. Now can you see I've got like a line here, so I'm going to do that along all of them, because then that will look a little bit deliberate, just a bit. So I've got that there. And perhaps if you're worried about getting these to meet up nicely, is draw the line in and then aim your curve towards the line. But there's two ways of doing it. It's just personal preference. I'm sure there'll be other ways of doing this. So, but then we have got the pencil lines in here, but perhaps you won't have put those in yourself. Again. My mind's just ranging back in time. So I also used to draw mandalas that were very non-geometrical, that had a lot of organic shapes and abstract patterns in. Often on black paper, and then with coloured pencils and so on to fill it in. So I've got this here. So what I want to do is I want to fill the outside here in, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down this a little bit. I'm going to go up, down, up, down, and I'm going to go and do that. That one's a bit skew-iffy, but I can live with a bit skew-iffy. So I am going up to that embossed edge, down towards the centre, up to the embossed edge, and then down at a slight angle. I will do all of these with you, because they're not going to be perfect, because I'm forgetting how wide or how I started doing them. I could have drawn a pencil circle in, so I made them all exactly the same. But I'll be fine with it this way, because the pattern is repetitive, and those imperfections, unless they're huge, glaring, slap you in the face with a wet kipper, kind of imperfections, they won't stand out. It'll work fine in the end. So I've got these here like this. And then I want to do something in the middle, and I'm going to go back to this kind of shape where I'm going to fill the centre with this, I'm going to draw these leaf shapes in like this. So I'm going back to that. Remember I came back and showed you that part way down we've got this arc shape here with the Betweed? Well, I've got that going on here. So rather than do lots of things that are very different, I'm trying to keep things so they sort of link in together in some way. So here, by adding these little leaf shapes like this, I'm tying this into the central part of the mandala, like that. Then I'm going to pop a couple more of these leaf shapes almost. A slight angle here, as if they're tucked in behind that one in the middle, like so. And then we're heading towards a kind of lotus flower, but I'm not putting any more petals in than these two, because then we will be getting into the realm of very small. And here they are very small, where I've got wider sections, as it were. We'll be looking forward to lunch while this video is uploading. I have to say that, well, it's more like a late breakfast, and it'll be a late lunch as well, but it'll work out fine. So that's already beginning to look lovely. Now I want to do something with these arches, but because I've done this line here, I've basically coffered them. I'm going to draw another border within, just to add that there. And where I've got, as I'm going around, I'm tidying things up as I notice any imperfections, because sometimes I don't notice it while I'm drawing. But as I go back, I go, oh yeah, there's a gap there, or that doesn't quite meet, so let's just go and fill that in. Again, these little imperfections, like I've got a little, the lines haven't quite met in this circle here. I'll leave them, because unless I pointed it out, unless you're really, really, really fussy about perfection, you're highly unlikely to have noticed that. Well, I'd like to think so anyway. Don't point your mistakes out to people. Show your artwork off. Don't point your mistakes out, because most people won't actually notice. Or they'll think, oh, that's something interesting you did there. Or you can always say, well, that was deliberate. I was just testing to see if anybody would notice if I made a mistake. So I've got all of this going on here. Now this section here, I'm going to revisit this kind of idea where I'm going to pop in leaf shapes like this, and here. So I'm doing a Tripoli, but instead of having a straight edged triangle, I've got one that's got curved edges. It's got 3 sides, therefore it is a triangle, regardless. So again, I'm going back to this central motif and just tying it and sort of like part of the Betweed together in this outer ring. Doesn't mean to say I always draw mandalas like this, you know, that I have this kind of thing going on. That's not always the case. Sometimes I can just fill in patterns as I wish. And with this one, I'm going to put a nice big circle here. I think I'm going to put a border around it and then fill it in with black. May not be the two borders that we have in the others, but it's enough to tie it in with these sections, I think. Nope, don't like it. Decided. Tried it, just plain black. It goes with those ones better. So let's quickly go around these. The Betweed, I think, took me a lot longer to do because there was a lot more lines involved. Okay, there's a lot more filling in black here, but... So, and I quite like this black around the edge as well, this contrast here, before I add any shadow colour or whatever I'm going to do. What's also nice is these are more or less centred on top of the boundary between each of the sections of, or the border between each of the sections of Betweed. So it's almost like they're acting almost like a finial, if you like. Not quite, because we've got a lot more detail along here, but I find that quite pleasing. And it was done deliberately. This one hasn't quite met up with this one. It's because I didn't stop and think when I was putting this one in. I was more concerned about getting the symmetry right round the edge. These ones the same kind of size instead of matching that up. My idea was to get them to match up, but if they don't exactly, it's fine. It's close enough. And it's something for me to bear in mind going forward, is that I really do need to pay more attention to spacing things out more evenly. And yeah, these circles are going to be different sizes because my shapes are different sizes, and that's fine too. Again, these will be perfect to have gold or some such in there, I think. Okay, so we've got that, and that looks great. So far, so good. But let me have a look. I do want to add a bit more black at the top here, so I'm going to put these shapes in as well. I think I should have done a double border, but it's fine, it'll be okay. So I'm just adding some more ink just to increase the intensity here, that little bit more, the contrast rather. More ink, more contrast. I think that'll look fine and dandy. If it doesn't, well, it's only a bit of paper and time and a little bit of ink, isn't it? And it's a learning process, always. Every time you draw or create, you learn something new or understand something a bit more, or work out what works for you and what doesn't. The trick is to remember those lessons, because as you know, I keep making the same mistakes over and over. I just don't pay attention to myself. You know, if I'm going to use colour for shadow here, which is highly likely, it's going to be monochrome. I'm going to go with blue, because I know that monochrome colour schemes always work for me. Always. My problem comes when I'm drawing things and I relate them back to nature and I want to get them that right colour or the same colours, or it's meh. That's why I like doing stylised and abstract so much, because it takes that pressure off me. But even then, I still have problems with colour. But it's fine. It is what it is. It's an angular thing. So I admire people who can use colour well. I do. I genuinely mean that. But it just doesn't seem to click with me. I know colour theory. and I will perhaps explore more and see what works best for me. Going forward, it may be splits complementaries if I want to use 3 colours. Analogous colours. Okay. Complementary colours are directly opposite each other in the colour wheel. So a purpley, reddy violet colour, its complementary colour is kind of yellow. Bluey purple, a cooler purple, its complementary colour is orange. And complementary colours make each other look a lot brighter. Split complementary would be where you have one colour with 2 colours opposite, not the complementary colour, but the 2 colours on either side. So for that warm purple, you'd have orange on one side and, oh gosh, sort of like a yellowy green on the other, and use those together. I think that's right. I think so. So a cooler yellow on the other side. So I witter on. So that's quite nice, but there's more. I'm just going to add little bits of black at the base of each of these little shapes here, just to add some weight there and that shadow. So that's split complementaries. As I try to imagine what the colour wheel is in my head and it's not functioning because I'm doing this at the same time. You also have analogous colours, 3 or 4 colours that are next to each other on the colour wheel, and they automatically sort of like go together because they're not that different in colour and tone. You also have triadic colours. And triadic colours, triad 3, they are 3 colours that are equally spaced around the colour wheel. And they work nicely together as well. And then you can have colours that are, sort of like, I can't remember the name of it, but you can have a colour palette made from colours, like analogous colours are next door to each other, but you have one colour miss a colour, another colour miss a colour. I can't remember what that's called now, but they can work nicely together. So there we are, there's my mandala. It does need some shading, so I might do some here. See, part of me just wants to use alcohol markers, but I don't think they're going to work very well on this paper. See, what have I got here? One of the scrap pieces from me cutting out my colours. So let me just have a look, because I've got my blues here, so yeah, they do tend to... Actually, I might get away with it. Let me have a look. So I've got a nice deep blue. I've got stone blue, ocean blue. And I will take the powder blue as well. Don't think have I got another blue. Cool grey, no. I think that, yeah, those would be dark enough. These are Arteza Everblend markers. And I am going to go hopefully quite deep, dark. I'm scared. I'm scared. Because I could so easily muck this up, but I am going to use these to add shadow in, like this. So I am going where I want the darkest shadows. I don't mind with alcohol markers, if they go into the black areas, it's not a problem because they won't dull down the black pen. But I am going to add some shadows like that. And I'm going to go on either side of these. And there as well. So we're going all the way around here just to help to lift these up. And I'm going to use lighter alcohol markers in a moment to see if I can get these to move out. I can see this bleeding a little bit. But if it bleeds a little bit, so you have a look, let me just zoom in so you get a better idea of what I'm doing. So I'm just going around here, around there, around here, around there, around there. I've done all of them that way. So let me get the medium tone, which is, that's ocean blue. What colour is that? Stone blue. Okay. So I'm just going to come around on the outside of these just a little bit. Just to extend the shadow just a little bit more, but also to increase that contrast. But also to blend this in. Darker colour and this one, when it dries, will be a bit more like the background colour. And then here I'm just going to, oh, missed a couple here, so got those, but I can go back and just add some of this in, like so. And I'm just going to add a little bit more just to do the same kind of idea where I've got these arcing out a little bit. And then I can use this lighter colour just to flick and blend those colours out a little bit. So that has added a fair amount of contrast already. And I'm just going to use this paler colour here just to really see if I can just lighten the edges up just that little bit more, just to blend them again. Part of me wishes I'd dug my chameleons out, but they're a nightmare to use on such small spaces to get the blends right. So these ones, I forget which ones I've done, that's my problem now. So let's just add some here. And then this colour is very similar in saturation to the blues in the background, so that'll be fine. That should blend out nicely. Now then, these ones, I am going to add shadow. I'm going to add it at the centres and at the edges. So let me do the centre first, like so. And then towards the tips. So hopefully I'll end up with this, with a highlight in the middle, which I will use a white gel pen on, just to bring that highlight out that little bit more. Just tidying this up that little bit more and making those a bit more like that. Just to bring the highlight out, so hopefully you can see what I'm doing while I'm zoomed in here, that my hand isn't getting too far in the way. Too much in the way even. But you can definitely see what's going on, so I am just adding some alcohol markers, the paler one, or the slightly paler one, and I'm blending it over the darker one, because that darker one is just that little bit on the greeny side, but it's fine. It works all the same. In fact, it's nice because it adds that little slight difference of colour here. And then I've got these ones here and here, and I think that's the last one. And then I think those need it. Yeah, that one did. And then I've got that, which is quite nicely highly contrasted. Okay, next job, the Betweeds. This is going to be interesting. Okay, down each side, like so, and I am going to go underneath this ring, like so. I'll do one, and I will make sure So I'm adding some of this lighterish blue here. I want a fair amount of contrast around the edges. I'm going to use the lighter blue then to blend this one out. And that'll be quite nice then. I think I'll just add a bit more there. And that works, I think that works quite nicely. So let's do that one again. So I'm going to add this ocean blue, or whatever colour it is, this darker blue colour here. It's actually a blue-green, but it's fine, it works. So round the edges, then I'm going to come back with the next colour, lighter colour, and I'm just going to go over the top of that one just to help it to blend out. And I'm going to add some of this colour, like so. I'm going to try and leave a nice space in the middle where we've got highlights. And I'll use the lighter colour just to blend this out and try and keep the shape there for the highlights quite nice. But I'm also aware that I'm going to be able to, what I'm going to be using was probably a white gel pen or some such to go back and add the highlights in. So I'll leave that one for a moment because I know what I'm doing there. For these ones around the outside, or this part here, I think I'll do some shadow on that, but I think I'd use the two lightest colours to shadow up here, so the shadow isn't as intense. So it's still that sense of shadowing of them being embedded downwards, but we've still got that highlight there. Okay, these around the outside edge. Okay, how am I going to do this? So the darker colour at the tips here. So I can do two at the same time, like this, you know, a couple of them. Down here, so we've got that going on. Then medium colour I'll use just to start to blend that out a little bit. Again, I want the shadow here because I want the shadows of the rings. Now these rings, I'm tempted to use a metallic pen of some kind to colour them in. Possibly. Then I've got my lightest colour here, which I can then use to blend this out further. Like so. And that's already starting to give some elements of dimension here. So I am just going to the ends of these little bits and just putting some of the paler colour there just to give a bit of shadow, I think, there, and to leave a smaller highlight as if they're bending outwards. Okay, that works-ish. You can see as they dry, it dries a lot nicer than it is when it's wet. So I'll just zoom out a moment so you can have oh, that was the wrong button. We don't want to go in any closer. Okay, so I've just zoomed out so you've got a better idea of what this looks like. In the middle here, I'm going to use the same kind of idea that I did with these, where we're definitely going to have shadows in the corners of these, here and here. So if I just do a couple of them, you can see what I'm doing. And again, I'll zoom in and do a third one. So I'm just popping some shadow down right next to these so they look like they're going underneath. The next lightest colour, the mid-tone I'm using, I can go here. Now I'm using alcohol markers, but this works for any kind of medium. The principle's the same. Even if you're just using graphite pencil to blend out, you put this is, you know, where I'm putting the darkest ink alcohol marker is where you would put your graphite and then blend it out, leaving that space for highlight. But again, bear in mind, highlights can be re-added with, you know, sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? With white chalk pastel, white charcoal, or other things like inks and so on. So don't over fret it if you don't get it quite right. There's always ways of fixing things. So I'm going to leave this, not like this. I am going to leave this here and now because I'm going to tease you, because while all of this is processing and doing what it needs to do, I'm going to finish adding the colour and the shadows to this. And probably not, I won't, highlights, possibly. Let me have a look. In fact, if I do some highlights now, then you can see what I'm doing. There we are, it's a better plan. You can see what I plan to do with them, so that because I'll use the same method or the same technique on each of them. So on these, I really want highlights on the centre. Now, it's not going to be easy to see. I've zoomed in, but hopefully you'll be able to see the difference those highlights make. I'm dotting the gel pen on because I don't like solid lines, and I can just tail the highlights off a little bit into the darker area like that. And so hopefully you can see, especially perhaps if I zoom in again, I can see that. Should I try increasing the exposure? Doesn't help much. But you can see that all I'm doing is just dotting the dots in here, trying not to go into the black area. But if I do again, that's no problem to fix. But hopefully you can see that. I'll see once I finish that we get a better picture. So I am also going to dot in these areas as well. So I am creating almost like triangles of dots here on the highlights inside here, which again brings out this shape. If you think about, we're sort of like, it's almost like we're creating echo lines, is it, or auras of this inner sort of like pointy triangle shape, but with the white dots. So not so many here in a wider area towards the end. You'll get that right. Along here, more highlight around the outer curve than the inner curve. That works. Okay. If I go to the Betweed, I'm going to pop highlights in these sections just to help to bring this up that little bit more in height. And even in the darker areas, I'm just going to pop a couple of little dots in, which you can see, hopefully you can see. And here I will do the same, so I'm just going to add some dots in where these overlap. Rather than using shadow, which I could have done, I'm using light just to help. Because it's not so much about the pattern of the Betweed, it's more about where the light would fall on this section. So you get that idea, hopefully. Okay, on these, oh, you can't see, let me move that up, there we go, and again. I'm going to add some highlights in this section here and there. Here, there's definitely going to be highlights on this part. Here, I'm going to have plenty of highlights at the top here, and here as well, and so on. And with these, I haven't coloured those in, but I think you can guess what I'm going to do. It's going to be quite dark down there in the pits of these little sections. And then I'm going to use, look at that, got it on my finger. Dear goodness. So I'm going to add some the mid-tone in and then some of the light tone. And because these sections are so small, this will mostly fill the sections in some places because I've got a variation in them. And that's where the gel pen really does come in, because I can just add some little dots right at the tip. Just to bring those highlights there. Okay, I haven't got the right kind of lighting really for this today, but does that help? Possibly. Yeah, you can certainly see those. Let me just zoom out. There you are. There's a slightly better picture of them. And I'll zoom out so you can see the whole mandala. And you can see that this is really beginning to, you know, show itself up. So I'm using the Artezas. I've got a gel pen and some markers, but I will finish this off and I will show a photograph of the finished one later on today. So thank you for joining me. This has been a heck of a long video. I hope you don't mind, but I haven't finished it, but I will show you later on. So if you have a go, please share what you create on social media. Tag me in it. I'd love to see. And until we meet again, take care. Be creative. Bye-bye for now. Bye.